Welcome to Making Trunk Lines. If you aren't sure what a trunk line is, go back to the terminology video earlier in this series to learn what a trunk line is. Let's jump right in. First topic, let's talk about diameter. How big of a trunk line, thickness-wise, do you need for your team? So I'm going to give you my best recommendations, and this is coming right from all of the national and world record events with the biggest, heaviest pulls there are. For almost everything on your team, 1/4 inch, and that's what I'm holding here, is a 1/4 inch trunk line, will be just fine. And yes, that freaks people out to no end. Anywhere I go in person on a team and I'm like, this is all you need is this thin stuff, and people absolutely freak out about it. Let's do some simple math. The breaking strength of this line is nearly 8,000 pounds. That's its breaking strength. Let's figure some bigger stuff. Conservatively, estimate a 4-tier pyramid at 2,000 pounds. The yank off the dock, let's triple that. That's 6,000 pounds. That means we're still not near the breaking strength of this. So I'm hoping that simple math in your head lets you, kind of understand what to work with. What are the benefits of this? It's light. It's light. It floats. It will make it easier for your skiers, especially those of you that are pulling the really big, wide lines. This stuff doesn't track much through the water. If you get a thicker line, it tends to bow and V through the water before that final pull of the boat comes tight. This tends to not drag so much because it's so thin. It doesn't have a lot of resistance if it catches the wake or something like that, especially in like a ballet line as it's turning. So lots and lots of benefits to this stuff. I highly recommend it. My recommendation again, go and get yourself a big spool of 1/4 inch Amsteel blue, and that's what you use for almost everything. And I keep saying almost everything. For some teams, for their biggest pulls, and I'm really generally only talking about big pyramids, you might want to go a little heavier diameter. Now, I got to be honest, we have used this stuff in the biggest record pulls there are. From the big pyramids for both the Mercury group and the big pull group, those huge pyramids, this is what we were using. Now we did split it up, but we've pulled up to 14 people with the hottest pulls that have ever happened, and this stuff has not broken. So that gives you an idea. You should be safe. I always tell teams, limit to 12 people per line. You should be just fine. Even if you go a little above that, you should still be okay. If you're nervous and really nervous, go one diameter higher. So maybe you go 5/16 for your pyramids, your biggest pulls. Those trunks, maybe you go 3/8, but that is overkill. 3/8 is serious overkill for any set of pyramid trunks. All right, so those are my recommendations on diameters. You can't go wrong with 1/4 inch. Let's talk about how long your trunk line should be. I don't have a magic answer, and doing it here in this kind of training video format, really, really hard to do. You're going to need some long ones, you're going to need some short ones. Here's some best recommendations for any team, and how many you make depends on how big your team is. First off, go out and make yourself several, can't tell you exactly how many, several 25-foot long 1/4 inch trunk lines out of Amsteel blue. Put loops on the end. At the end of this video, we'll talk about how to actually build one of these and make the knots. But go and make a bunch of 25-footers. Why 25 feet? Just from experience, it's a good number and it works for a lot of stuff. It's going to work for things like a doubles line. It's going to work for a swivel line. A couple of trio sets will use it with no problem. Conventionals, you might have 2 or 3 of them if you have a bigger conventionals line, but 25 feet with 75-foot ropes hooked up to it, that's a really good number. So to me, 25 feet for most teams is the most common length of trunk line you're going to use. Make yourself a few of them. Make a couple of shorter ones too. Now this happens to be older, this is plasma line, but I would now make some 5 or 8 footers, a few of those. And those are more for your practices, or maybe you're sending 3 swivel skiers out and they need something to link up to, but they don't need to be real far back behind the boat, 5 or 8 footers are probably pretty good for that kind of stuff. So make a couple of those. So some bunch of 25s, couple of 5 or 8 footers. Then you have to look at your axe and customize from there. Absolutely, you medium to larger size teams, your pyramids, your ballet lines, your barefoot lines, if they're bigger barefoot lines with a number of people in them, you're going to need to go longer. And I can't tell you how long. It depends on what you have. Now, in acts like your pyramid and your ballet line, you want to keep that act inside the wake. You don't want people outside the wake. That is, a bad mojo right there. But how long is it? I don't know. You need to experiment with that. Have I seen ballet line trunks for, even medium-sized ballet lines? Yeah, they're typically 40 feet long, something like that. As you get wider, you're absolutely out to 60, sometimes even 65, 70 feet if you're talking the really big 30-person ballet lines. It gets pretty long. Pyramids, same thing. You don't want your pyramids going outside the wake if you can help it. So if you're running 75-foot pyramid ropes, and that varies because some teams run as short as 50 feet, others do 100-footers, 75's kind of in the middle there. It depends on what you're running back there. If you're running just a single 4-high, or a double top 3 with just, 6 bases, you're counting your bases wide, you're not going to need to go back very far. You're going to maybe need a 25-foot trunk line right there. But when you start running multiple pyramids, multiple 4-highs, absolutely, you're out at 50 and 70 feet long, potentially, for the really big pyramids behind the boat to keep everything inside the wake. So I can't give you a hard and fast rule right there. Length is dependent upon those big acts, and you need to customize them yourself. I will recommend you plan ahead coming into any new season. If you are the rope person, coordinate with your show director or show committee and talk to them and say, do we have any new acts that are wide? How many shoulders wide are we going? And you should start, looking at that ahead of time, especially as you start those first practices coming into the season. How far back do we need to be? Or maybe you've had an influx of membership and you're going from a 2-4-2 pyramid, and all of a sudden now you got a lot of talent coming in and you're going 4-3-4. That's a big leap, but that's also a huge leap in how many shoulders wide you need to be behind the boat, and your trunk lines are going to need to change to reflect that. So plan ahead, because sometimes it's hard to get a hold of this stuff. Demand, fluctuates, and sometimes midsummer it's really hard to get a hold of a spool. So have some on hand and try to get those trunk lines adjusted and done well ahead of your season if you can. Here's some supplies you will need for making trunk lines. Obviously, you're going to need your Amsteel blue or plasma line in whatever diameter you see fit to use for your team. So you'll need that, and you need the other regular rope making tools. You'll need a FID, tape measure obviously, probably a marker to mark with, some electrical tape. That's all pretty standard from all the other videos that I have been showing you. And then you might need some of this other stuff. FIDs. You may need different diameter FIDs, because while most ski rope, regular ski rope, is either 1/4 or 3/8 inch and uses a small FID, the diameter of your plasma line or your Amsteel blue could vary greatly depending on what you're doing for your team. You may need to go out and get some larger FIDs. Typically, when I have found these, I have not been able to find metal ones in the larger diameter. I've had to go plastic, and when I make these, when I cut these off with a hacksaw, you have to be a lot more gentle. These tend to crack. So if you get sawing too aggressively with a hacksaw to cut these down to size, they will tend to split, and as soon as they split, they're useless to you. You might as well just throw them in the trash can. So if you need some larger diameter ones, you're doing some thicker diameter rope, you can find these, Walmart, something similar. but get some bigger ones to fit the rope that you need. Cutting tool. Amsteel blue and especially plasma are very, very densely woven ropes. Far more than regular ski rope. If you've been using just an average, like a utility knife, or God forbid a kitchen knife or something to cut your rope, that is not going to work for these. You will tend to not get through the line, and you will start pulling individual strands if you are using any of those types of knives, and you'll kind of destroy the rope. So get yourself some type of heavy duty cutter, and there's different ones out there. This is like a multi-tool cutter. This stuff cuts leather, it cuts like vinyl tile, stuff like that. It's really made to cut stuff. And get yourself an extra, if you're going to do a bunch of these, get yourself extra blades right away. This stuff is so dense, even this thing will get dull quickly. I'll probably get maybe about 20 cuts out of a blade on Amsteel blue. No joke, on plasma, it's so dense and it's so compressed that I'll maybe only get about 8 to 10 good cuts and it'll destroy one of these blades. It'll be dull after that. So again, recommend good heavy duty utility cutter with extra supply of blades if you are going to be cutting a bunch of Amsteel or plasma. Those are the supplies you need. Let's jump into actually making a trunk line. Making a trunk line. Here we go. First off, 2 videos you need to go back and watch. If you have not watched the video earlier on the season, or in the series on basic knots, so there's 2 basic knots you should know, you need to go back and watch that first, because this is just a variation on one of those knots. So please watch that first. And you should probably also watch the video on how to make a main line. Making a trunk line is very similar to a main line, and we follow some of the exact same steps. We just tie the end loops slightly differently. Unfortunately, blue is the only color that I have for Amsteel blue right now that I have sitting on a spool and I can actually make something. I am wearing a blue background here, so I will try to hold this up to the camera for you, and I'm going to do this slowly so that you can see every part of this. I need you to trust my experience on this. I'm going to do a knot that a lot of people say, why would you put that in a trunk line that handles all the weight? I have used it for years in nearly every world and national show ski record that has been out there. We've never, ever had one fail. Knock on wood. Not a single time has one of these knots or loops ever failed on a trunk line in these huge pulls that we've done. Very similar to a main line. Here we go. I always follow the 2-foot rule. I put 2 feet of excess on each end so that I can go back and adjust later. So you can't see it on camera, but I have a tape measure here. I'm going to measure out 2 feet. I'm going to make a nice mark on this, and that's going to be the end of my loop. All right, so there I go. That's my end. This is going to be my loop right here. I have this tail. I'm going to put my fid on here because this is only 1/4 inch. I can use my regular fid that I use for everything else. I should say too, your fids are going to get dirty when you're working with Amsteel or plasma. I know that sounds weird, but from what I can tell over all these years of using this stuff, the regular fiber for Amsteel and plasma, for both of them, is gray in color. The natural fiber color is gray. So if you have any other color other than gray, it's been dyed. So they basically dipped the rope in a dye. I certainly know it for this blue stuff because I can see part where it didn't get dyed real well and it looks gray on my spool. And this blue dye, after just a couple of knots, I'm going to start seeing that blue dye come off on my fids and it gets sticky. The stuff is really weird. So if you notice after 2 or 3 knots, if you're doing a few of these, take your fids, go throw them in the sink and throw some dish soap in there and scrub them to get the dye off. It'll make the rest of them a lot easier. So little pro tip from experience right there. All right, I'm going to find my mark. Here's my mark. That's going to be my loop. This is just like making a main line, no difference to start out with. So I'm going to put my loop right there. I'm going to stab my fid through the middle. I'm going to try to push this and open this up. One of the things you're going to notice very quickly working with AmSteel and plasma is its density. It is hollow, just like regular ski rope, but it is much more dense and it doesn't want to give. So you have to spend more time working your fid through it and be gentle, because you can also pull out fibers and destroy the rope. All right, so there's the end of my loop, and I have my tail. Just like I would, I'm making the Mad City style knot that I was taught years ago that will come back out over time. And yes, that's what I use for trunk lines with a little variation, but we start out the same. So we're going to go right over the top here, through right here, just above where we pass through. Again, the rope is dense. Take your time. Open it first with a pinch. I'm pinching it together to open it up, so I can kind of see some air passing through it, and then that makes it easier for me to get my fid through there. And you're going to have to work this a little bit. It doesn't want to go pass through nearly as easily as it does on regular ski rope. So I pull that through. Hope you can see all that. I'm going to pull that tight. Now, if I was doing the regular knot on a regular ski rope, and if you remember this one from basic knots, I would put my fid and I would bury this whole thing straight down. To add even extra strength here, I'm going to weave it first. So again, I pinch. I'm now going to be beneath the knot right here. I'm going to be just below it. I'm going to pass the fid back through, straight through. Work it. Try not to damage the fibers. Work that through, and I give it a pull until it's tight. I'm going to weave that back and forth 5 times. Why 5? I just know it works. Do you have to do 5? No. Have I done 3 or 4 sometimes? Yeah. But typically everything I make, I do 5. I know it works. I know we've pulled record numbers of people with this stuff, and it's never ever come out. So I'm going to weave back and forth. Bear with me here as I'm doing this 5 times. I'm keeping it pretty tight too, and all that is going to cinch down. There's 3. Four. And one more, here we go. There's 5. All right, so before I go any further, make sure you can see what that looks like right there. I've got my loop on the end. I did the knot that can come back out, and that is the thing. These will be more challenging to get back out because of the weave, but you still can come in here typically with the point of a fid, and you can open this back up even 2, 3, 4 years later if you need to rework this rope and adjust it. All right, so I've got my weave done. Now I'm going to bury this excess in here, just like I would for a regular ski rope. However, here's a pro tip again. Here's my tail. I'm going to get rid of that for a second. This is the main part of my trunk line right here. And the pro tip, because of the density of this rope, you want to go all the way along here and pinch this all the way along. See how I'm opening that up right there? You want to do that for as far as you need to bury. Do that ahead of time before you try to bury it. It will make your life a lot easier. Just trust me on this one. Now, I'm going to time hop here slightly. I'm going to get started. This stuff is significantly harder to bury and feed than regular ski ropes. So once I get it started to show you, then I'll time jump over getting this completely buried. This is no different than burying any other ski rope that we've done. We'll come in here, and you will notice a lot more friction. Even opening it up like that, you're going to notice a lot more friction on your fid. That is normal. And you got to learn how to work this with your fingers all the way down. All right, I'm going to time jump right here until I've got this completely buried. Okay, so we have time jumped here probably about 4 minutes or so it took me to bury that. It does take a while. Your fingers are going to cramp up a little bit. You can see the dye coming off of the am steel onto my hand. It's on my fid too. It's hard to see probably on camera, but I can see some blue on there. So again, make sure you scrub these and clean them up periodically to do this. But here is my finished end for my trunk line. I've got my weave, the rope is buried, everything's in there nice and tight, I'm good to go. So what do? You pull the rest off the spool, measure it to length. I do use exact length, so if I want a 25 footer, I'm going to go mark 25 feet on the other end, cut the 2 extra feet off, chop it, and I go through and I make this exact same knot on the other side. Now, you're not quite done. Remember I said watch the main lines videos? Similar to that, you still need to stretch these. But be careful. This stuff has far different properties than regular ski rope. This is going to be more like steel cable. So I usually hook it up with carabiners. I put a different trunk around a tree with a heavy duty carabiner. I go hook a carabiner up to my trailer hitch. And in the last video for main lines, I said when you're going to stretch this stuff, kind of let your vehicle drift into it. And that stuff, when you've done a few, you're going to feel it's more like a rubber band. It takes a while to stop. Say you have a mid-size SUV like I do. It takes a little bit for that to stop as that rope comes tight. Not so with this. It's going to be you're puddling along and all of a sudden, oosh, really hard. You need to give this just one good tug. That's all you need. It'll stretch out once and it's done. You don't need to worry about it going back and forth or anything like that. So after you just give it one good tug, go and remeasure, double check. You might need to adjust one end and you should be finished. You shouldn't get any more stretch out of these at all after that. It's one stretch and they're done, and they keep their shape after that. Just be careful with your vehicles though. Make sure it's a big tree. Don't get a running start at it. Otherwise you could potentially damage your vehicle, damage your trailer hitch. This stuff is crazy strong and it will give your vehicle, it'll stop it real quick and give it a jerk. So just, I don't want you to damage anything there. But anyway, that's it for trunk lines. That's how you make them. They're all the same. It's just a loop on each end. Again, let me show you. So here's one already made. I think this is actually a 25 footer. And this one was made a while ago, but you can see the weave there. You can see the loop. Same thing over here. And that's it. That's both ends. And you are ready to go with your trunk lines.